What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to focus on settings and different tips that'll help Premiere Pro run smoother and better throughout their editing process. Now let's get started. Now, if you enjoy watching these videos and you want to see more like it, please subscribe to the channel because I'm constantly creating new content. Now let's start with a few of the settings that I have found that have helped me have Premiere Pro run smoother and make the editing that much less frustrating. So first thing I want to do is I want to head up here to File, and I go down to Project Settings, and there's a General tab inside of that. I'm going to click on that. It's going to pull this Project Settings window up. And let's focus here on this first one that says General. There's a little pull down menu here to the right of Render. If you click on it, if for some reason yours is clicked Software Only, change it to Metal or OpenCL. But if you're working on a PC, this might say CUDA. You click on that. The key is you want to get out of the Software Only. So on Mac, I have Metal here or OpenCL. I'm going to stick with Metal. And if you're on a PC, like I said, it probably says CUDA. This just means that your video rendering and your playback throughout your workflow will be processed by the GPU and not just the software. So I'm going to close this down now. Now the second thing I want to do is head up here to Premiere Pro, click it and drop down to the Preference section, and then to the right there'll be a General tab. Click on that, and it's going to open up the preferences for the entire program. So let's head down here where it says Media Cache. And up here you're going to see a thing that says Remove Data Cache Files. This is a manual delete, so you can manually click this and it'll delete. It'll say Delete Unused Media Cache Files. Click OK. And I like to do this before I start a new project. And I also have it automatically delete caches anything older than 30 days. So on older projects that I'm not working on, every 30 days it'll also go in there just in case I forget to manually do it. You can set this to as, anytime you want. You can do a week, you can do 60 days, 90 days, which I think is the default is 90 days. But I do that just in case I forget. Another important factor as far as the playback speed when you're working, when it doesn't have drop frames and things like that, is your hard drive speed itself. So in my iMac, I have the Fusion drive. Because it's a slower drive, it just gets kind of bottlenecked and it starts to glitch and pause and do different things like that. So I work from an external SSD drive. You can buy a small external SSD drive from Amazon for like $80 for like a 500 gigabyte, and that'll definitely get you started. And if you store your entire project and work from your project off that external drive, which is running at a much faster rate than a traditional hard drive, because a lot of times it's not even just your computer, the processing power, it's literally the hard drive not being able to keep up with the data rates as you're reading and writing, doing color correction, and doing all the different adjustments. It's struggling with just the reading and writing rate, and that's part of the reason it starts to slow down, and you're getting those drop frames and that kind of bottlenecked, choppy workflow. So I always work off an external hard drive. And the next little section I want to focus on here is right underneath Media Cache is the memory section. Make sure this is clicked to performance, not on memory. And then also here you'll see this little RAM is reserved for other applications. So on my computer I have 48 gigs of RAM, and it's saying the RAM reserved for other applications is 6, and a RAM available just for Premiere Pro is 42. You want as much RAM as possible dedicated to the program. So when you're doing multiple items, color correction and effects, you have as much RAM working for you as possible to help juggle it all. It's essentially telling the computer use all of your RAM as much possible power to work with Premiere Pro while I'm in it. I'm going to click OK. So another thing I do, especially when I have higher rate footage, like 4K footage, 60 frames or 120 frames, I don't ever apply effects or color correction or anything like that going. I always get the editing done first. And a lot of times when I initially put my clip in, I'll render these clips out. So as I'm cutting them up and moving them around and doing playback, it's smooth. So you can head up here to Sequence and go to Render In and Out. I have a keyboard shortcut for Command R. You can set that if you like. It's going to go through and it's just going to render the clip. And then once it's done rendering, you're going to see the bar top here is going to turn green. So that means the playback will just be that much smoother. Another thing you can do if you have a clip that's very heavy in data, come over to this little drop-down menu, which says Select Playback Resolution. Right now I have it set to full, but you can obviously lower it to half or a fourth. So if you have a 4K footage, this is only 1080p, so that's why it doesn't go down. But if you have 4K or if you have even like 6K or even the new Canon 8K, you can drop it down to 1/16th, which will lower the resolution. So as you're playing it back, it's not trying to play the full resolution here every time. You're just trying to cut it together to get the story going. So you can set that down to lower resolution, so that it'll play back smoother. And then when you export it, of course it's going to export the full resolution. This is just for the playback purposes inside this window. And the one last thing is, after I've pieced together my project and I have color correction, I have all the different effects, I have, the blurs, the this, the that, whatever it is, if I'm still wanting to do certain things and maybe make some more adjustments, but then after I've applied all those different effects, it's really kind of weighed down. So every time I make an adjustment, I have to re-render it, and that's kind of a pain. So what you can do is come up here. I've set this this effects mute button, which you can obviously add it if you don't have it here. Click the button editor, find it, drag and drop. So I place the effects mute button here. So right now I have this color correction here. Let's just say I want to add a blur. So I'm going to type over here. We'll add a Gaussian blur. So now it needs rendering again. And now you start adding multiple effects and the color, you know, say we want to change the saturation again or do whatever. But now it's going to need to be rendered again. You don't have time to keep rendering it every single time because you keep adding these effects. You can click this effect mute button and you see how it turned off all the effects. So then when I go to play back, it's nice and smooth because it's not trying to process all those different effects. It's not trying to process the blur. It's not trying to process the adjustment in the color saturation. You know, you can have 4 or 5 effects to this one little section, and your computer might be struggling, and every single time you adjust that, it needs to be re-rendered in order to play back smooth. So to save you time, you can just turn the effects on and off. So if it's turned off, it just plays back that much smoother. And then the very end, of course, you can render everything out, and you're good to go. Anyway, I hope some of these tips and adjustments help your workflow run a little bit smoother if you're having problems. If you like this video, please give a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm. And if you want to see more videos like it, please subscribe to the channel. That being said, have a great day. Later.